and put it in there. And then after filling in the fields, I'm going to have you go to another link that gives you a web map for the results. I'm going to open it in the map viewer. The default is it opens up in the classic map viewer, but I'm going to open it in the new map viewer. And you can see here that this is a recent workshop that I conducted on a university campus. And the participants in the workshop were filling out this survey of tree species, and they immediately appeared on the map. Here is one of the tree species. So again, you got instant gratification. This survey that I have in this slide right here is open until I, the author of the survey, turn it off. It is an open survey. As I indicated about a half hour ago, I have the capability to vet those surveys. I can get an email. I can get some sort of a notification in my survey when someone fills this out. In this particular case, I don't have those things in there. It's a completely open survey, and until I, the author, close that survey, it's completely open. Someone has to know that URL, though. They're not just going to be able to stumble across it, which is kind of a nice safety valve, if you will, for ArcGIS Online. Since it has those long alphanumerics, it's very difficult for someone to stumble across your survey, even if you have it crowdsourced, without you tweeting about it or blogging about it or writing an essay about it, directing people to the URL. So I've got a lot of open surveys, and very few of them actually have a notification to myself to check it. Most of mine are for educational purposes, though, so admittedly it might not be maybe as important as some of the things that you're collecting, but they're very useful. And over the years, I've really never received any sort of inappropriate submittal to any of my open surveys. So again, someone has to know the survey URL to be able to fill that out, and then the results, of course, are poured into a web map. Now, at this point in the workshop, I'm going to have you build a survey. Spend a few minutes on it. It's not going to be your master's thesis, but I want to give you some capabilities of creating a field survey. So I'm going to scroll down now, and hopefully if you go to my URL, which is, again, I'll just write it in the chat box. So my own website there, and remember that is the very first link that you see on there, workshop on comparing field apps. And in there, comparing field tools, and in there, I'm about in this set of slides, I'm at slide 60 and 61. So here is where I'm going to give you maybe 10 minutes to create a survey. And don't worry, don't stress. This is hopefully an easy, fun, relevant introduction to, in this case, I'm picking one of the 3 field apps because this is really the most accessible and the ones that we can actually have success in here in a 2-hour workshop. But creating a survey, you're going to go to survey123.arcgisonline, arcgis.com. You're going to sign in with your credentials, and you're going to use these next few slides to create a survey. Now, I've got some ideas, some questions, and this is obviously a walkability survey. Okay, is this place walkable or not? Describe how walkable or not walkable it is. You're all lifelong learners and professionals. So if you don't want to create a walkability survey, you don't have to. You can actually use this time to explore maybe creating a survey on something you want to collect or are already starting to collect or think about collecting. So don't feel confined to use my own example here, okay? But I'm going to come back at around 20 minutes to the top of the next hour. So around 10 minutes from now, I'm going to touch base with you all, and we're going to go through a couple of these. When you're done with the survey, if you finish, I think you can do this in really a few minutes time. Don't overthink it. Test it. Add a point to your survey. And then if you want to, if you get done early and you want to create a map from the survey, that is the next logical step. So for example, remember my survey for the tree species? Remember I poured it into as you can see here, a web map. I configure the pop-ups a little bit, but I basically made a web map in ArcGIS Online from the survey. So if you get done with the survey design and you want to create a map from it, feel free to do that too. Okay, so we are, again, in the sort of slides 60 through 65 zone in that set of slides, and I will be here to bounce questions off of, to chat. I'm going to come back in 9 minutes and check in with you all. Okay, happy survey creation. Hi, folks. I know it's always such a brief time to be able to do this effectively, but hopefully that was a little bit of at least a couple of toes into the waters of creating a survey. And Nancy, I did see your note there. Let's go over to the survey design form real briefly here before I get to the next section of the workshop. And that is, okay, let me get to that tab. Right, so inside I've got this survey 1, 2, 3 zone. Again, I've got my surveys, and I don't want to save the ones the one that I just edited, but you can see that I've got a bunch of surveys in here. And so, for example, the SCGIS conference survey, I was in a moment ago, and I've got the collaborate tab saying, okay, I want everybody to be able to submit data to it. I'm going to go to the design tab here, and then I can say, oh, I want to add something. And then what are my choices here? One of the choices, by the way, the reason that I got this map on here is just from this map choice right here. And then I specified the extent and the base map. So you'll have the capability of doing that. Remember, obviously for a wetland or something, you'll want to make that really large scale. And that's what your users will see. Okay. And I'm going to go to single select here. And are you enjoying this workshop? For example, I don't want 3 choices. I just want yes and no. And I don't want to allow others. So that's basically it for the single choice. I hope that's helpful. Let's do this, folks. You were starting to build the walkability story map. Okay, let's take a look at what I did with that after I was done. So this walkability story map is, as all story maps are, a multimedia web mapping application. What is the walkability or pedestrian friendliness of your community? So in this particular case, this shows you hopefully the advantage of actually folding in your survey, your dashboard, and additional text and multimedia into a story map, which is one kind of web mapping application that you can create. So in this case, I've got my whole story of, is this place walkable or not? And why does walkability matter to neighborhoods, to communities? So in this particular case, I've got my walkability story map. And in here, I ask people, okay, assess the walkability, just to kind of get them interested in and thinking about how would you rate this? This is where I'm hanging out right now. Front Range of Colorado. I've got the bank cloud, the altostratus lenticularis cloud sitting up there, a sign of fair weather here in the wintertime. I'm on my bicycle. You can see the short grass prairie meeting the Rocky Mountain Front Range in the background, people on horseback in the background there. I do a lot of walking on my work travels and in other travels, and I oftentimes encounter this, not so walkable, sidewalk ends, drop off, railroad track, etc. This was actually pretty walkable, sort of, when I walked on it. No railing, so you have to watch your step. But a couple of years later, the lake level, that was Lake Michigan, got too high and it was sloshing over the top of that breakwater. So not walkable there so much, depending on the time that you walked it. This is actually the most famous, probably the most famous intersection in the world. You probably know where it is, Abbey Road in England. It's not very walkable. There are no traffic lights right there. So you have to have a friend or a loved one saying, hey, oncoming traffic, please slow down while my friend is getting a requisite geeky picture in front of Abbey Road. Some neighborhoods, are walkable, even if there's no sidewalk, like this one in Kentucky. And I do a lot of rural walking too. I'll just share this with you to be fully transparent. You're the SCGIS community. You love getting out in the field. Most people are like, Joseph, why are you walking on river bottom lands? Isn't that a bit muddy? Yes, but it's awesome. I love river bottom lands. Why care about walkability? So I've got some text in there. And notice inside my story map, I have a click to submit point, and that bounces me to the URL for my survey. Is it pedestrian friendly or unfriendly? This is what you were starting to build. Rate the walkability from horrible to excellent. Tick all the choices that describe the site. This is a multiple choice. They can click more than one thing, right? Dedicated path, wide path, noise, obstructions, etc. Where is the site located? And then do you have a photograph of it? You can also design a form, a survey form that has the capability of multiple photographs. Okay, and then in my story map, I have a web map that gets a live feed from all of the submitted surveys. And you can see here, I've got people submitting points and photo. This is my own photo for my own survey. Look at the companions I have there. Kangaroos. That was a pretty cool walkabout. Good on you. Indeed. Those kangaroos are awesome. And then further on down in my story map, I have a dashboard, just like the dashboard we looked at earlier. The dashboard gives me a live feed from my survey. And again, until I close off that survey, it is going to be continually updated with the indicators, with the bar chart. The only thing that doesn't update here is the legend, friendly or unfriendly, and also the graphic, just to get people thinking about walkability in the lower left. Everything else updates. There's some semi-advanced things I do on this dashboard. I have a sorted list, dedicated path or sidewalk. You can see the most commonly ticked one is at the top, and then the top 3 months for surveys. I have obviously a filter running on the data there, and I have a timed 5 data points were added last month. So everything else, though, is I would consider to be sort of basic dashboarding. Okay, so that is a little bit of designing a survey, and then the map that you create from it. Remember, the survey is a form. The form, once you publish it, the reason why, and maybe some of you went through this part, it spins a little bit, half a minute or so, but it's creating an editable feature layer. A feature layer. And that feature layer then you can pour into, as I have on this slide 64, you basically say, go to the metadata page for that layer. I never metadata I didn't like. Oh, that was a bad geo pun. But you go to that item content for that feature layer, and then you say open in web map. Open in web map. And then once you're in your web map, symbolize it, classify the data, and then save it. And then you've got your web map. And then you can create a dashboard and a story map from that. Now, remember, just a nudge for what I was talking about earlier. Having the data then in a map is not the final goal. It is then to dig into some of the analysis tools in ArcGIS Online or in ArcGIS Pro, and then communicating the results with dashboards and story maps and instant apps. Spatial analysis is a subject for a whole workshop, but proximity tools, intersection, mean center, standard deviational ellipse, hotspot analysis, etc., on your data. So you can do that. So I love this. Stephen Hawking. Not only is it important to ask questions and find the answers, I feel obligated to communicate with the world what we're learning. So the communicate tools allow you to do things like create a dashboard. And I've got some guidance here. Workshop 2 hours does not permit us to actually do that hands-on in this workshop, but you can see here that it's basically like a survey. The plus sign gives you a lot of power. The plus sign in a dashboard allows you to create a pie chart, a list, a indicator, a map, all those things with a plus sign. If you want to dig deeper and say, I really want this widget to be over here and I want it to do that, then you're beyond the template, what I call the template-driven apps, instant apps, dashboards, story maps. Then you're getting into the experience builder or the web app builder, where you say, I want this to do this and I want to position here. Think of it as, again, choosing the most appropriate tool for the job. If you want something fairly quick and straightforward and easy to use and easy to configure, then the configurable apps are the way to go. If you want to dig deeper, then you've got the capabilities there as well. And then finally, in this particular exercise, and feel free to go through this on your own time, once you've got your dashboard and your survey created, then fold those into and create additional content for your story map. And I have a little bit of guidance here with a quote, paragraph, some multimedia that you could put in there. But again, don't feel obligated to use my text. If it's something that you care about, then it's even better. It's even better. But I've got this in here that you can use as a exercise on your own. This lesson that we just went through, those previous, 13 slides, is actually fully documented on this website right here, connecting surveys, maps, dashboards, and story maps. So I've got that in there. All right, folks, we're coming to the last 10 minutes of our workshop here. I want to give you some further resources so that you can keep learning and growing with these, because they evolve, your needs evolve, the needs of your organization evolve. So this is a lifelong process. But hopefully, just from this workshop alone, you can say, hey, there's a lot of capability here. And within 2 hours, I'm hoping that you've got some more confidence that you didn't have before. The Esri training site is kind of a one-stop shop for lessons, hands-on, face-to-face, instructor-led, on your own, all kinds of different learning options. This story map, even though it says apps in schools, I'm in education, so I was going to show this, but even if you're not in education, actually, this is really quite good. It's from my teammate, Kylie Donia, and it is about some of the things that we talked about here, with some of the same things that we chatted about, but it's in a story map format. And there are some additional resources there. So I think it's a good one to use to compare. Don't let the schools part throw you. It's actually useful for many, many others. There is a series called the Higher Ed Chats. It's a bit less formal than a webinar, but we have them every month. You don't have to be an educator to participate, but we had one on comparing field maps. Again, with an education focus, all these are education focused, but I would just invite you all. I would love to have some of you folks from the SCGIS community participating in that. We have a equivalent awesome education team at Esri Canada, and they wrote a very nice essay on demystifying field data collection apps that you can find at that link. And I also encourage you to collect these tools. Remember my mantra earlier that modern GIS is a platform. It's not just one or two tools. It's an interconnected platform. And so what about embedding a survey in your story map like I did with my walkability, or use a survey in a dashboard like these folks did at the port of Tacoma? They've got a survey inside their dashboard and inside a story map. Also, remember, don't just collect data. Analyze it, map it, classify it, get other people's input on it, and then communicate your results with some of these tools, but also extending beyond the instant app, the story map, the dashboards, to embedding maps in videos, writing chapters, blog essays, and others. I think the wider community needs to know the power of geospatial technology. Oftentimes they think that, oh yeah, I had that in grad school. I had those GIS courses and it was really hard and clunky, but that was X years ago, right? It was hard and clunky. And there was only a very few number of people, right? As a sort of a niche technology. Few people knew how to do it in an organization. The GIS people, yeah, they're down the hall and to the right. Go see them. They're a little bit nerdy and a little bit geeky, but they can set you up. They can help you. Now it's more and more pervasive in an organization where you've got more people empowered to use these tools, I think in large part because of these configurable apps and maps that we talked about. There are ArcGIS tutorials featuring field collection apps. We have a library of lessons called the learn.arcgis.com lessons, and you can see some of those examples there: student hangouts, equitable drinking fountains, mapping the cleanup, and meaningful places in your community, historical homes, and so on. And in that zone, there's Survey 123, as you would expect, field maps and QuickCapture tutorials with guidance beyond this particular workshop that we are giving here. On this page, I know it's a lot of resources, but the MOOCs is something I haven't talked about yet, the massive open online courses. There's one called Do-It-Yourself Web Apps that I think is very appropriate to the topic of this workshop. Massive open online courses. There's one on cartography, spatial analysis. They're all free. They're all 6 weeks long. They're all quite rigorous. They're all fun. The people teaching those are very knowledgeable, but they're also very good instructors. For example, Ken Field, Edie Punt, and John Nelson on the cartography team. They've got to keep you engaged for 6 weeks. So even if it's something that you say, hey, you know what? I've got an hour a week. I could take that MOOC. The reason why they're not just do it yourself, any time of year, is that they're designed to be a cohort of people going through, sort of like a university course. You're going through at certain times of the year, and you're developing a relationship, perhaps with several other participants that you find common ground with in the MOOCs. You're all going through this at relatively the same pace. Week 1, you do the content sometime during week 1. Doesn't have to be, it's not synchronous. So it's sometime during week 1, you do the content. Sometime during week 2, you do the content for week 2, etc. So there's discussion boards and all that sort of thing that you would expect with a cohort-driven course. There's also these things called the ESRI community space. I write in the education space there, and I'll show you some of the things that I do on that community space. So for example, the things that I write about are displaying field survey results on maps. I bring this up because this community space is a forum to get unstuck when you get stuck. There's lots of good people on there to answer your questions. And there's also some content that's published. So for example, not that this is the end all be all, wrote this about 3 weeks ago, displaying field survey results on maps. How do you do that? What are the main methods? I mentioned at the beginning of the workshop, there's something called photos with locations. I've got that in here. I've got some of the other things that we've talked about, map tours, and so on. So that's part of the education blog that I write for, and there's lots of other community spaces as well. There's one on Survey 123. There's one on QuickCapture, one on Field Map. So it's the community using those tools that interact and help each other out and pose questions. Okay, so that is comparing two. Actually, you got, for no extra charge, you got a little bit of QuickCapture in there as well, which I hope was helpful to compare and bounce, off of the other two main ones that we spent time with, which was Field Maps and Survey 123. I hope that was helpful. And there's my contact information. Folks, do you have any last minute questions, comments, or anything like that? I'm getting some comments here in the chat. I hope that was helpful. Truly, I do, folks. I will see you maybe at other parts of the conference, and then maybe at another event in the future. Map on, and I wish you all the very best in your future geospatial journey.